Welcome to Wills, Estates, and What Comes Next, Probate Insights with Jamie Cuzmar.
Welcome to Wills, Estates, and What Comes Next, where Florida families get clear, compassionate guidance through estate planning and probate. I'm Jamie Cuzmar, attorney and founder of Cuzmar Law. I help families across Central Florida protect what matters most with practical planning that meets people where they are. Today, I'm joined by financial advisor Jack Green from Raymond James. We're going to talk about how financial planning and estate planning work together, from protecting your retirement to passing your wealth on to the next generation. This is financial planning and estate planning, how Florida families can protect their future. Welcome, Jack. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me, Jamie. I'm excited to collaborate and talk a little bit about how we help people.
Absolutely. So financial planning, I like to say, is estate planning adjacent. So, definitely a lot of clients come my way where I will refer them to a financial advisor like yourself to kind of go ahead and tie all the loose ends, so to speak. So this episode is more so to kind of highlight your background and also what you do, so we can get the audience kind of a little bit of a taste of what to expect and what the benefits of financial planning are. So first, let's touch about what's the initial financial step for someone starting the estate planning process from your perspective, Jack?
Yeah. So when it comes to financial planning, I want to clarify that everyone has a unique situation. Everyone's circumstances might be a little bit different. Our focus, our specialty is on helping people with retirement planning. So that would be someone in their 50s and 60s who's worked, 20 or 30 years, accumulated assets, and wants to take that next step into retirement. And that's why working with, your law firm, Jamie, is a perfect collaboration, because we're helping the same people. And the first step of financial planning in regards to that retirement plan is to figure out where they are. What type of assets have we accumulated? Do we have a 401k, a pension? Do we own assets like a home, maybe a business, right? And so it's just a candid conversation about where we are currently, and then what does the future look like? What are our goals over the next 5-10 years? And making sure that we can, sit down, have open, transparent conversation, and help them, our clients, to realize that there's little efficiencies that we can tweak here and tweak there to get them closer to their goals and make their goals a reality, simply.
Awesome. It sounds very comprehensive. And certainly it depends on the family themselves, of course, and where they're at and what their goals, like you said, and objectives are. So how specifically can families protect their assets while ensuring comfortable retirement? So along the lines of retirement, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question. And the reason why I like it is because you're talking about how do we protect our assets? How do we make sure our family is safe? And our goal as financial planners is to put, I'd say, like a financial wall around our clients to protect them. And so what we do is build out financial plans for every single one of our clients. And that financial plan allows us to determine a couple things. One, what does the future look like? What type of growth can we expect in your portfolio? What's a future net worth calculation? But it also allows us to find out what is your target rate of return. Now, this is kind of something that's it's not commonly calculated, I'll put it that way. Most people, when they look at their portfolio, they look back at the end of the year and say, oh, I made 20% or whatever number, XYZ, but they don't actually know what number they need to hit to make their plan sustainable. So as the financial plan unfolds, we find out what that number truly is for a lot of people. And for our clients, they've accumulated assets. And so we find that target rate of return could be anywhere in the, 5 to 10% range, which just basically means they don't need to take on as much risk as they truly think going into retirement. And I think that's really telling when I tell people, this is your plan, this is your forecast. And as long as we hit this number, your required return, you will not run out of money, right? It's a beautiful thing when the plan shows you that you can live sustainably at a, certain target date of return. So our goal is to just find what that number is and then diversify those investments to make sure that you hit your number each year or around it. It's an average. And basically just protect your family. And we do that in a couple different ways. We have a couple different buckets. Bucket number one would be your short-term liquidity bucket, your savings, your emergency fund. Bucket two would be your medium-term bucket. This would be like your aspirational bucket, maybe 3 to 5 years. What's coming up in the future? Are we buying a house, selling a house? Do we want to take care of our kids' college? Do we want to go on vacations? What's our goals for the next couple of years? And then that last bucket, the longer term, that'd be 10 plus years in the future, where we're just focusing on growth. So by splitting our assets up into those 3 buckets, it actually allows for that diversification and protection of those assets.
Wow. So the term financial planning is kind of hits the nail on the head, where there's a lot of planning behind the scenes that people might not be aware of. So that's something that I'm not even aware of in some cases. That's why I come to professionals like you to help with my own planning. So generally speaking, what specific products or investments are usually most effective for families that want to pass on generational wealth to the next generation?
Yeah, and this is where we really collaborate with attorneys like yourself, Jamie, because anytime you have a family passing on assets, that is just screaming, we need an estate plan in place, right? One of the things with our clients, because they have accumulated wealth, it's taken them 30, sometimes 40 years to build their empire, to build their family nest egg.
Right.
And one of the things that comes when you pass along these assets to children is that they might not be ready to accumulate or inherit lots of money. And so one of the things that I've noticed in my 10 plus years of helping individuals with financial planning is that when you give a kid $1 million and they're not ready for it, it will be spent very fast. Right. And so one of the things that we do is sit down with an estate planner and talk about what type of, control would you like to have for your family to protect them, to make sure that they are not able to necessarily do something that would get them in trouble or harm them because of a huge windfall. So to put it simply, trusts and estate planning, critical when it comes to passing wealth to the next generation. One of the things that I also tell a lot of clients that they might not be aware of is how an after-tax account gets a step up in basis, right? So what that means is if you just have a normal brokerage account, if you were to pass away, your family will get a step up, meaning that, let's just say you put $100,000 in, it's worth $200,000 at the day of your passing. In the IRS eyes, at that day of passing, the asset cost basis, what you own, will step up to that 200,000 level, meaning your kids or your beneficiaries inherit that money with little or no taxes. So I think that's one of the type of accounts, same thing with real estate most times, that gets that step up, which is really advantageous for passing wealth to the next generation.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on 2 questions that I was going to bring up, and that is the step up in basis. That's a huge benefit for the beneficiaries if they're going to inherit the assets properly. I tell people all day long that's going to really make a big impact, especially for the high net worth families out there. Also, you touched on how financial planning and estate planning aligns. And so it's definitely something where a trust planning might come into the picture. And I know you and I work really closely together and making sure our own clients meet each other and kind of discuss their specific wants and needs. And of course, we make the recommendations based on their specific facts. So that's the lovely thing about having a financial advisor like yourself on call to say, hey, look, have you talked to Jack before? Take a moment to meet with him. And as far as I know, there's situations where we'll gladly, share some of our knowledge during a consultation. Sometimes there is even no charge for that, just to kind of get an introductory as to what options are out there. So as far as my background, a lot of times the clients want to come in for also asset protection, from risks like lawsuits and from creditors or nursing home costs. Does financial planning align itself with some protections there along those lines?
It does. It does. And like you just said, Jamie, I think the biggest thing is working with a team of trusted advisors. And so when we work with our clients, I kind of imagine myself as like a football analogy, like a quarterback, right? Yeah. And we're going to delegate to those specific expertise. And so for you being a fantastic estate planning attorney, there's areas in the financial world that I understand, and then there's areas in the state world that you understand. And we're going to collaborate together to make sure our clients get the best results. And so I'll bring in a CPA to make sure that the business is being taken care of in terms of their the corporation, if they own an asset that's a business, real estate, right? CPAs can be a huge help, as well as the estate planning attorney. And there's a lot of times where I find that people say, oh, well, I want to save money on my estate plan. And I think that's a huge red flag, because I want to bring the best people in to make sure your family is protected. And so when it comes to saving money on that, I think it's well worth it to pay someone what they're worth and protect your family. To answer your question about how to protect, right, and preserve assets in regards to creditors and nursing homes, what we try to do is build out protection, right, like I said. And so one of the ways that we look at that in the state of Florida, right, you have your property, your primary homestead property, that's creditor protected, meaning that if you were to get in a lawsuit, you typically can't have your home taken. 401ks, IRAs are also creditor protected. One of the things that we also look at is how your assets are titled, right? How are they registered? And this is huge. And Jamie, I know you're very attuned to this. How do you have your accounts owned, essentially, right? And so if our client has a business, right, or several businesses for that matter, do we have an LLC to make sure that there's protection between the business and your family? If we have a couple different aspects of the business, maybe we have an operating company, meaning the company that generates the cash, right? That could be one LLC. The separate one could be the actual business building, and we separate the building or the intellectual property into another LLC. They're both very similar, same ownership, but it allows you to separate that risk a little bit, as well as looking at general liability, right? We bring in other experts that do commercial insurance, making sure that there's an umbrella policy, that we have workers' comp, all these things to make sure that our clients don't have any surprises. That's huge, right? We want to make sure that when they sit down with us, we have all the bases covered. I know that you and I both do a fantastic job with that, Jamie.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have other professionals, at least relationships with other professionals like a CPA. You brought up a huge point there. A CPA is invaluable to people that, want to benefit from certain tax laws and stuff like that. So that is one of the reasons why, professionals like you are so valuable, because not only can you answer questions in your own realm, but when it falls outside of your realm, you can either refer them to a professional like myself, an attorney in estate planning, or a CPA for that matter. So switching gears a little bit, one thing that comes up in my discussions with potential clients is long-term care. I have people that are nearing retirement as well, or people that are already retired come to me. Long-term care insurance. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Do you guys offer a product there?
We do. And I'll tell you what, Jamie, that is such an interesting topic, because it is a dire need, and especially when it comes to a financial plan. When you look at what happens when someone's in their late 80s or 90s and they actually go into a facility, quite simply, it can blow up your financial plan. And I'll tell you why. Today, if you had to take a guess how much you think a long-term care facility costs, it's incredible. It's about $100,000 a year. Okay. And I think the biggest thing, and this is what I love when I show the financial plan and we forecast out 20 or 30 years, is how big of a deal inflation is. Okay. The past 5 years since 2020, we all got a taste of what inflation is. But when you look out, imagine 30 or 40 years in the future, okay, when you actually need that long-term care. If the cost of it today is $100,000, the cost of it in 20 or 30 years, when you go into a facility, it's going to be $300,000 or $400,000. Now, these are estimates. There might be changes in technology that allow us to have different types of care, but just looking at inflation, the math shows it's very expensive. And so the tough part is, even if you've accumulated $1 million, $2 million, when you go into a facility, you're going to use a lot of those assets. Right. And the problem typically happens when you're married and you have one person go in, the other person has no cash left over to live because the use of that long-term care is so expensive. And so it leaves one of your partners typically without cash. So
Exposed,
to
yeah.
answer the question more directly, I can talk about this all day. What we do for our clients who are in their 50s and 60s is we do long-term care. We shop for around, find the best company. We search all the different products to find which one's the best fit for you and your family. And the interesting thing with long-term care today is that it's a life insurance type investment for most people. And so what we're doing is we're buying life insurance with a long-term care rider, which means that you can use that benefit as you go into the facility. And if something happens to you before long-term care needs arise, that you pass away prematurely, your family gets that benefit, that death benefit. Whereas in the past, in the early 90s, right, the old school long-term care policies, if you didn't go into a facility, you actually lost those dollars. So that's changed considerably. The one thing I will tell everyone is that it's earlier to get it. The earlier you get it, the better, because it's all based on your health, right? They do underwriting. So if you're in your late 70s and you want to do long-term care, it's very expensive, almost prohibitively, and they'll check your health. And so it's one of those things that for someone in their mid 50s, early 60s, it's a perfect time to research whether that makes sense for your family.
Yeah, and it's better to plan ahead for these type of things, because if you wait to the last minute, a lot of times your choices in facilities or even your own healthcare are lost for that matter. Sometimes you get stuck in some place that maybe you didn't want to be in the first place, but because of the cost prohibitiveness, the cost, especially in the future, you might not end up in a subpar place that you never imagined you see yourself in. So thank you for that. Now, here's one interesting question. Now, after an estate plan is in place, how often should families update their own financial plan?
So I think they are correlated, but not necessarily the same. And I'll explain this. So when we update a financial plan, it usually happens every single meeting. Okay, so I'll meet with clients once every 3 months, once a quarter, typically. Some
Mhm.
people say, Jack, I love you. I don't want to see you that much. I'll see you once or twice a year. But for our clients that want to come into the office and sit down and review the plan every 3 months. And so we're updating the numbers. We're looking at if they have a cost of living adjustment on their pension, their social security. What does the budget look like? How is your retirement going? Are there anything that you want to talk about? When it comes to the estate plan, what I like to do is really just make sure that the estate planner is always up to date. And so I'll reach out to Jamie and say, hey, did you know that Mr. and Mrs. Smith had an update? Do we need to make sure that their vacation home is part of their estate plan? Right. And so whenever there's a major change in regards to beneficiaries or real estate or business assets, if there's a material change, I will call Jamie and say it's time for us to make an update. And so it really just depends on life, on what's happening in their world. That's how often we will update the estate plan. If you've had your estate plan, checked in with Jamie, I know he does yearly updates as well. He always makes sure that our clients are taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And then life changes is a big one too. If you're getting married or divorced for that matter, or adding, having children or stepchildren, it's an excellent time to get with ourselves to just double check to make sure there's no gaps in your planning. So one of the things I see a lot of people Googling, information or trying to do self-help type of stuff. So what are the common financial mistakes that families will make when they plan without professional guidance?
Yeah, and I think for today's world, the idea of using Google or ChatGPT is very pervasive. And I, for one, am all about education. I think if you can go online and find 80% of the answer, that is a good thing. I want people to be educated. I want people to understand what's going on. I want people to understand how investments, how taxes, how estate planning works. The problem is when you look at that person who's trying to do it themselves, right? There are so many nuances with financial planning or estate planning that even if they're pointing in the right direction, they might not be able to implement it. They might not know how to actually achieve their goals. And the way that I describe it, Jamie, is that for a lot of our clients in those 50 and 60 age ranges, they only retire once, right? You have one shot really to make this go well. Whereas a professional like myself and you do this every single day. where we are helping people solve complex problems. So, when someone sits down at my desk and says, I have all these things I want to achieve, I've done that before. I've helped someone do exactly what you're talking about. And if I haven't, I have so many contacts, not only within my Raymond James financial team, but also through many industry experts, right? That we can lean on and find the exact fit for what you're searching for. So that's the tough part with using a chat GPT or a financial Google search, is that you might find the right answer, but how do you implement it and make sure it's done properly? One of the things I find a lot of people doing when they invest by themselves or do an estate plan by themselves, and I'd love to hear your view on this, is that they look at it so black and white, whereas there is gray area involved.
Yeah.
Right. And so I find a lot of individuals who are trying their own investment strategy to say, oh, well, I'm going to put all my money in some certain stocks and they're not diversified. Or when in April, there was a market pullback because of the tariffs, people were calling me saying, is it time to get out? What should we do? The world is ending. In those scenarios, what I find the value that our team provides, Jamie, is that we are there to find and help you plug or fill in your blind spots. As humans, we all have blind spots. We all have things that we maybe are not good at, not our strengths. And so when you have the ability to talk to someone and say, well, did you consider this? Or did you consider that? Most times our clients leave our meeting and say, I'm so glad you were there to talk to me and help me think about what I was going through. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, there's no one to talk to except maybe the guy who sits across from you at the investment club, right? And
Yeah.
they probably have just the same outlook that you do, right? And so that's our job: build a financial wall around our clients, make sure that they're protected, and have a team of experts in their corner so that way they can bounce ideas off of us.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to touch on before we close out is to remind our listeners that you are a fiduciary. A financial advisor is a fiduciary, not just somebody that's trying to look out for the best interest. You actually have you have to have the best interest of the client in mind, just like myself as an attorney. We're looking out for the client. So thank you, Jack, so much for your insights today. That's it for today's episodes of Wills, Estates, and What Comes Next. A special thanks to Jack Green for sharing his insights on how financial planning supports a strong estate plan. If you like guidance on protecting your assets and planning your legacy, visit Cuzmarlaw.com to schedule a consultation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.